Good morning and welcome to GM Tips. GM Rick here, looking kind of festive. I still wear my Christmas stuff even when it's not Christmas. Um, oh, it's silly. I just like my shirts. So, again, you'll see a little bit of background. One of these days I'm going to get a green screen once I get up to Ohio. And I think when a lot of things get up there, you're going to see a lot of things change. I'm going to add guests in. We're going to have maybe a microphone that's a higher grade microphone. You never know what you're going to see change-wise. But I'm devoted to making this better as we go. However, content is an important thing to me, and I think content and topics of all things are very, very important. So today's topic, we're going to discuss on the lines of GM encounter preparation and challenge preparation for your party and the party levels, and some common mistakes that are made, and also we're going to talk a little bit about players addressing GMs if they feel the need to do so, and how would be a good way of doing it. So let's start off a little bit. You have players that are prepping for your game, whatever genre, whatever system you want to use. This is system agnostic, okay? Though I may refer to a few systems, this is system agnostic as a whole. So you as a GM want to make a campaign that challenges the players and yet allows them to role play and really reach the goals that they want to reach. And we've talked about this in earlier videos. There's a ton of videos of mine that you can go back to and reference in this regard. And one of the things, and I appreciate my friend Chaotic Anarchy for bringing this up. I wish I librated them a little better for you guys to follow, so please forgive me in that. If you ever want to know on a topic and is a topic appropriate for what you're trying to learn on, ask me. Send me an email to RicMoh45 and let me know. Let me know what you're looking for. Is there a topic I discuss on this? I am more than happy. You are not bugging me by any means by emailing me. In fact, it lets me get to know you a little better as a person and as a GM, your specific needs. And I'm more than happy to dig in with you. Even as a player, if you want to learn about a system or if you want recommendations. I had a group of players that looked into the Pathfinder strategy guide and I was able to help them with that. So, that said, you're building a campaign for your players and you really want to challenge them. How do you do this? Well, number one, you got to test the waters a little bit. When you start out, here's my recommendation. The challenge should be about at least 2 notches higher than the character's current levels. Okay? You don't want to destroy them. That is not your job as a GM. Though sometimes a little bit of a lesson where their character dies is not a bad thing. Okay? Especially if they can be brought back. But your goal is not to destroy the party, all right? You are to challenge them. Now, sometimes you're going to get these players that no matter what you do, are going to look at you as a GM because you're challenging them as, boy, you're just a jerk of a GM. No, you're not. Look, these are the heroes of the story or the anti-heroes. They're going to be looked at as a target. They put a bullseye on themselves as they adventure. Because sometimes they're going to do things that are really amazingly good, that's going to draw attention, or heinous, which will also draw attention. And what happens? Think about it. Is Batman nice to the average criminal? No, not at all. When you put yourself on the radar, you are now a marked target for Batman, at least. Maybe Superman, maybe the Flash, maybe whoever else in your campaign, your version of this. Or, flip-flop, you are a Flash for Captain Freeze, or for, I don't know, Doc Croc, or somebody else like that. When you show yourself as a hero, you paint a target on yourself because you're now an imposition to them getting the things they want to get in life. So you will draw the attention, and the more that you do, the more tougher the opponents, because you're drawing the attention first of the petty ones, but then you're drawing the attentions of the majors. So like the lieutenants, the captains, the whatever in the organization of goods or bads that you're coming up against. You are painting a spotlight on yourself and a target. It happens, okay? It is part of life. Think about it. When a real life Osama bin Laden started out, he was nothing to people, nothing to the U.S., maybe a little bit of an inconvenience to the Russians. But as he got good at what he did, and I'm not saying a good person, but good at his craft, he drew higher and higher attention to where they eventually sent Navy SEALs to go take care of business because he put a huge target on himself. That is what happens in a game. That is part of the challenge of the game. So remember, you as a GM, you want to ratchet up the encounters as they get more of a target. Your players are going to grump a little bit. But guess what? Life is not about easy foes and opponents that you just blow out the water, Mr. Player. You are directly attracting attention, and any GM that does not ratchet that up shows a real disservice to you as a whole by not doing that, okay? So number one, don't be afraid to ratchet it up. That said, you have to be careful too. Like for instance, and this is going to go into my party and something that happened this last weekend. We had a couple players that like to metagame, okay? One player in particular liked to read modules to double check me as a GM. Now, players, I will say this to you. That is a huge frickin' no-no. If you read material that a GM is running, you are metagaming. I will put the stamp on that 100%. And you know me, guys. I'm very forthright about being positive for all players and GMs. This is something that I will say is a huge no-no. And if you start doing that, you need to stop. That is cheating in the highest regard. And that is not a service to your GM. Now, if you've run the campaign before and they're aware of the module of the campaign, that is something, GMs, you got to take into account too, that you can't make your player forget what they've already run through. Okay? You can change it up. It is the GM's prerogative to change it up, players, especially if they feel like you're going to know the material. It is the GM's prerogative to do that, to change it a little bit and make it more fun and more surprising. So don't get mad at them for that. Now, that said, if every encounter the player walks through in one round, it is not challenging enough. Combat or a confrontation should take at least 5 to 10 rounds and last about a half an hour. Some of you GMs don't like that. And some of you will say, well, I don't want to stay there. I want to be more in the storyline. I understand that. Let your players know that you're more about storyline than that. That's a fair thing, okay? However, that is part of the fun of this challenge, all right? So there's that. Now, that said, also, you need to look at different things that are going on, all right? And ignore the phone. It'll go to voicemail. And ignore the voicemail, please. So, unfortunately, guys, in this case, we had a situation where I had a player that was metagaming, and I had to let them go. Please understand, that player had been with me 3 years, and I was tolerant of this player and the activities of his for 3 years because he was a good friend. I don't recommend it to any GM. All right? Just kind of ignore that. That's Peter in my work. So, yeah, you got to sometimes look at this thing, folks, and you sometimes have to say to yourself, is it doing a service to allow that player to be in my group that long? I would say that's up to you, and you need to absolutely look at that, and you need to kind of work with that and say, is it something that I really want to work with or not? Okay? Second, and really important in this, I knew that letting this player go would hurt 2 other players because they were good friends with him and gamed a lot with him, and it would have fallout. And it goes to my second point that is very important to the player as well as the GM. If you have issues with the challenges your GM puts to you in a game and the difficulty, you need to take that up with the GM offline after the session. If you, as a player, throw a temper tantrum and cut loose and cut off because you think you're going to say things you shouldn't say, or you say things in a session that you shouldn't say that then disrupt the harmony of that party, it is a no-no as a player. And I know we all make our mistakes, and we all have our characters we love, and we all feel like sometimes if there's a death of our character, that is a horrible thing, and it is. Look, no GM in their right mind that's a good GM loves killing your players. They don't. And sometimes collateral damage will happen. In this case, the target was a charnel god in Pathfinder. Look them up. They're a kind of interesting thing. They take away the divine abilities of the divine players. Okay, and that's not a definite guarantee, but it's a possibility. And if you blow your rolls, it'll happen. And it does happen. Sometimes all your divine players will blow their rolls, like in this case in this session. They had a summoned general of one of the god's armies. And of course, for a charnel god, that is a target. That is the ultimate bullseye. The healer of the party happened to be behind that general, healing him, doing their job as a cleric. They hit him with a Banshee's Wail. A Banshee's Wail is a deadly spell. It can do up to 25d6 in damage, or if it is taken in an epic level, 25d8. In this case, it was 25d6. It does 10 points. I'm sorry, it wasn't the d6. It's 10 points per level, up to 25 levels. Or actually more. It actually can go above that. So, cleric took over 200 points of damage. The general took over 200 points of damage. It killed both outright. And badly. It killed them. That said, don't throw a fit. Make sure you don't use it as a time to say, well, you should have done this. Well, I want my character to stay this. All that stuff should have been communicated long before the session. And just because a counter is tougher than you, and was done that way because of how the toughness of the party was to challenge them, you got to look at what you did that you could have done different as a player, instead of throwing the fit at the GM. And in this case, if you choose it as a point to sever from the party or walk away, you as a player are showing a major amount of immaturity. Major. And then berating the GM for their skills afterwards, it's even worse. That shows how immature of a player you truly are. So players, have the class to sit down after the session and discuss it with the GM. Try to steady your emotions as much as possible. If you need to go take a walk and clear your head beforehand, just say, hey, I really need to take a walk and clear my head. But do it verbally. Don't do it written-wise. That is a shameful thing to do. I know it's hard sometimes as people for us to face a situation, and we may have our own fears, doubts, anxieties. You owe it to the GM to talk with them as best as you can. And GMs, you need to be empathetic in this. And this goes with ratcheting your encounters up. Sometimes they're too tough. Sometimes you could explain to the player, okay, yes, I know it was tough, but did you explore all your options? Did you look at this and this? And the player goes, well, no, I didn't. Then player, it's not the GM's fault, okay? But GM, be empathetic too. You got to look at it and say, all right, was I a horse's rear in putting this here? Okay? And could I have done it different? But it's not your time to say, well, you're just a horrible GM and you do this all the time. And when did you talk to the GM about that player? When? Oh, wait, you didn't. You did it for a surprise attack after on the GM. That's really classless. So, I know I'm hitting all these things, but this all can fold into how tough an encounter is and how you set things up, GM, and player, how you respond. It is important that we respect each other, okay? And I get it. There are some GMs and DMs that are out of control and that won't listen. That's a different animal. Then that's on the GM, you the GM, that you need some growing to do if you're not willing to listen to your players. Players, it is growing on you if you're just going to sit there and attack the GM. That's not right either. We are a community and a harmony system, especially if you're friends in a game. Come on, guys. one of my friends said it, one of the players said it best. It goes, it's an effing game. That's true. Our game is an effing game at the end of the day. We pride it, we put a lot of passion into it, but at the end of the day, if it destroys a friendship, what are we doing? All right, so that's that. Enough said. Next topic on this. Look at how you can take things out of the obvious for the party. It's always fun to throw a twist into things as a GM. Not a so out of there they can't figure it out twist, but sometimes a mind bender is a good thing. So when you're designing your encounters for them, it's okay to do a mind-bending experience that makes them really think outside the box and have to utilize skills and other things there. That's part of the CR of it. It goes into the CR. It doesn't always have to be physical, destructive damage. It can be a mind bender. For instance, a room doesn't let you teleport and gate in and out of it. Yet you got to get out of there at the end. So maybe it's a puzzle. So it's like a puzzle where you have to figure out the pieces of the puzzle in order for the ability for that gating and thing to come down, or allow a way out, or activate something that's an escape route. For instance, in this thing that we were doing, one of the things that you had to do, and this is a spoiler, so any of you playing this adventure path, Reign of Winter for Pathfinder, fast forward past this, okay, because I don't want to hit you with this. In this case, there were some of the living daughters that had been siphoned by the Baba Yaga. And in order for these parties to get that part of the thing to release the Baba from her Matryoshka dolls, they had to take the living hearts out of these half-dead creatures, put them into this teapot, and brew it up. And then by doing that, it activated the return mechanism to take them back to where they could get another quest, and they unlocked another Matryoshka. That's the kind of thing you want to do. You want to have these kind of little mind-bending things. You don't have to make them gory. If people don't like gore, you can go a different route. There's lots of ways and lots of things you can do, and a lot of these books, or you can even look online for RPGs. What are great puzzles or traps or things to look through? And they'll give you a level of difficulty, the DC on it. DC seems to be a universal thing no matter what difficulty class. That's universal no matter the system. So you can design it. You can say, okay, this at this stage, the party can handle DCs that are 3+ above where they currently are. They still can figure it out. It's going to be tough. It's going to push them a little bit. They're going to have to exercise abilities and capabilities, but it's doable. And that's part of the players knowing your craft, too. Players, and again, something for the players in this. You have to think outside of kill it, beat it, squash it, okay? Sometimes you got to think about, all right, can I bullshit it? Can I do something else to work around it? Is there an angle I can take with a skill that I haven't thought of? And GMs reward your players, whether it's a extra roll, like in D&D. So you want to have a buff or something like that where it gives you a buff. You add buffs, you can up the dice roll. Like in Deadlands, you can give them a poker chip that allows them to buff up to the next thing. There's a lot of ways you can do this to reward outside of the box thinking. And please do. Because when players, and I did that with my group afterwards, I said, hey, for doing this, add this. For doing this, add this. Now, some of your other players will go, well, what about me? I should have gotten something. Next time, follow the lead of the other two. Think outside the box. Just because you've got a combative character doesn't mean they always have to go to combat. They can think other directions. Okay, depending on their intelligence or whatever it is for their score, their learning or their whatever you want to call that score. It is basically your intelligence or wisdom scores where you're sitting there kind of reasoning through things. That's something you can reward players for. All right. Now, if you got a 6 in that, then you kind of play it the other way. But that's okay. GMs, you can still reward. So let's look at Travis on Critical Role. Perfect example. He played a Goliath. The Goliath's intelligence was not there. Not there. So what would he do? He would throw out smart remarks that followed his intelligence. And I loved it because it was humor relief, but it's also in my mind XP rewarding relief if you do that. Or you can give them, other types of rewards if you don't use XP, but make it worth them role playing it out a little bit. That's always fun with that. Now, in finishing up with this, I think this is the other thing here. When you make your encounters, make them reachable. They can be just maybe out of reach to where they need some other items or things, but make sure you kind of leave subtle hints that other things could have helped them in thinking. In some cases, the parties burn hero points, or reward points, or buff points, or whatever it may be. Like Open Legend has a lot of buffs, so they have banes and boons. Banes and boons are another terminology you'll hear used in RPGs. Maybe you have a bane that keeps you from doing it, but you have some boons that you've earned that those boons come important. So like in Numenera, you can burn an XP point to get a better thing towards the result. Even if you fail, it goes a better direction. So keep in mind, you got to be, as a player, thinking about, what do I have that can help me? Don't just think in the moment. We get that adrenaline flowing as players, and we get it kicking in, and we forget what's there obviously for us. And that's sometimes what you need, is you got to have that subtle reminder that happens. So GMs, you might say, are you looking at all the angles? Are you thinking adrenaline, or maybe you need a quick minute to think about, what can I do? Sometimes that little subtle hint, GM, will help them. And you can do that. Don't give it away. You don't want to make it obvious. And sometimes I do this. And it ticks my... And again, it's a learning thing that I've learned from this session. Sometimes I would explain things to justify to my players. It is not something I'm going to do going forward. I'm tired of explaining. The encounter is the encounter. The campaign is the campaign. You figure it out. And I appreciate, those of you that are loyal players that go, you know what? I'm here to help my GM to get better. I want them to be the best they can be so I can get some really cool things going on. And they're my friend, by the way, so I'm going to do that. So all that, there's a lot of different ways you can skin a cat when it comes to upping the challenge for your players. And you really do want to do that. And players, you have to look at it that way too, is that the GM is trying in their infinite wisdom to make it as fun and challenging for you as they possibly can. Because that's really, really, really important on that. All right. Now I'm going to end with a note here. And you guys can cut off if that's all you want to hear about. But this is for the players. All right. And it's going back to the first point. 3 pieces of advice for players. And GMs, you got to work with them on this too. You can't be the absolutist going, yeah, you should do that. We all feel that way, all right? Because these campaigns are our babies. Players, number 1, remember the GM is doing their best to make a memorable campaign for you. No GM is perfect. None of us are. You think you can do a better job as a player, then get in there and GM sometime. And then take the critique back. Because let me tell you, it's not an easy thing. And to be the pushover GM that goes, okay, yeah, I can do that. Okay, you can do that. Okay, you can do that. That's one way of approaching it, and I respect GMs that do that. It is not my cup of tea. I like there to be that little boost of challenge that's constantly making me rise above as a player and get better at what I do. Okay? So look at it this way. The GM tries to make it challenging to push you as a player to be that much more of a realized player. Okay? Also, do not let your feelings fester. If you have something that's hurt your feelings or you think is not the right way to do things as a player towards the GM, take some time to constructively sit with that GM and talk with them and give them feedback. Don't just all be negative. Tell the GM what they're doing right that you love, because that's always important too. Hey, guys, none of us like being beaten up. player or GM. None of us do. We're not there to come in and have somebody beat us up when we're trying to have fun and play. But constructive criticism is helpful. It can make us do a better job the next time. And it's a two-way street. Keep in mind, as you guys debate back and forth, there's something for each of you to learn. And listen for those things you can learn and grow in. Yes, we put our creativity and our heart into something, but please, sometimes you have to step back and look at things and say, why would this person take the time to sit down and talk with me about this? Because they obviously care. Don't let it fester. And this, I'm going to say this to you, as GMs and players both. Don't you dare let something go and bother you and bother you and bother you. And then at the last moment, like a frickin' powder keg, explode on the person that you're having the problem with. I get it. It's not always easy. We're not always extroverts. I'm an extrovert, but I used to be an introvert. Don't know if you guys knew that. Growing up, I was a friggin' introvert until about high school. Then I became an extrovert. Changed how I charged my batteries, as they say, on Briggs Myers. Don't let the excuse be, I have a hard time talking with people. If you want your feelings to be understood and respected, you have to voice them. And in a way that you try to word it in a way that you would want to hear it. Okay? That's the best way I can tell anybody that's an introvert. Think about how you would want to hear that said to you. And then try from there. Just do your best, okay? I know sometimes it's insecure or it's fearful to put your heart out there and you worry that someone's going to stamp on it. GMs, don't you dare stamp on their heart if they put it out there. Sit down and listen. Sometimes truth hurts. Sometimes it's unpleasant, but at least they care enough to speak to you. As you can tell, this last weekend bothered me with what my three players did. And I don't forgive them, and I did. I was tolerant and nice to a point, and finally I told them, forgive my language, to go fuck themselves. Because they sat there like little immature infants and waited to the last minute to dump all this on me and then attack other players that were good players in the group. That's uncalled for. And I'm tolerant to a point, and I am forgiving to a point. And maybe I should be more forgiving. That's a shortcoming in me. But I do my best to be the best I can be. And yes, I finally told them to go pound sand. And that hopefully they'll grow up and learn to be real men one day. And I don't say that lightly. If you guys know me, I don't say that lightly. I don't. It's not to good friends. But that shows that how it was handled was poorly in addressing it with me. My door's always open. My phone's always on. You can call me anytime. And I am honest when I don't agree with something or something bothers me. So, thank you for this 28-minute video. I hope it helps a lot. I hope you have a great week. I'm looking forward to add some new people to the group, get things back on track. I love my two players who stayed with me. Man, Max and Josh, you have my heart. You guys are class. And I've got two class players that I love. I truly do. As a friend, I love them because they have handled this with such maturity and such humor at times that they've made my day. So, thanks. Have a great week, and keep watching GM Tips.